August 14th, 2025, 4:30 a.m., the eastern sky of Ukraine was no longer dark. It was burning. From the direction of Buryatia, Moscow unleashed a storm no army had seen in years. 180 drones, 20 T-90 tanks, and 500 recruits moved forward under orders to crush the defense, seize the ground, and end the war before dawn. Russia believed nothing could stop them. But hidden beneath the fields, under the broken roads and trenches, Ukraine waited. Reconnaissance drones circled above, feeding images every 8 seconds. Artillery locked targets with the patience of hunters. Mines, traps, and ambushes turned the countryside into a silent fortress. This was not just another night on the Eastern Front. It was the moment steel would collide with strategy, when numbers would be tested against precision. Will brute force shatter the defense in minutes? Or will the battlefield itself rise to swallow the invaders? Stay with us, because what happened next turned Russia's boldest strike into one of its darkest defeats. In the hours before dawn, the eastern border of Ukraine lay under a heavy silence. Villages along Zaporizhzhia, Pokrovsk, and Novopavlivka seemed asleep. Yet every window, every trench, every shadow was alive with expectation. Soldiers clutched their rifles, listening to the faint hum of engines beyond the horizon. The night air felt heavier than steel. Across the border, Russia prepared its move. Dozens of infiltration teams slipped quietly through rivers and farmland. They moved like ghosts, burning barns, cutting power lines, planting explosives at factories. Their mission was not to occupy. It was to destabilize, to ignite chaos from the inside, just as the main force prepared to strike. Inside Ukraine's defense lines, commanders monitored flickering screens. Drones above sent back images every 8 seconds. Heat signatures revealed small Russian groups moving in the darkness. Yet the order was the same: hold fire. Wait. Patience would decide the battle. Civilians huddled in basements. Children clutched their mothers, as distant artillery flashes lit the sky. Some prayed. Others simply stared into the blackness, knowing the storm was coming. At 4:50 a.m., a Ukrainian operator whispered into his radio. Movement confirmed. Multiple vehicles. Multiple drones. His words carried across the network, tightening every chest. The stage was set. Hundreds of Russian soldiers advanced, convinced the border was weak, that the villages ahead would collapse without resistance. Their commanders promised victory before sunrise. But what they did not know was that every step, every track of a tank, every shadow of a drone was being recorded, mapped, and fed into a defense system waiting for the exact moment to strike. The night was silent, but it was the silence before the explosion. At exactly 5:30 a.m., the silence shattered. The eastern sky erupted in fire, as 180 Russian drones surged forward in waves. Some carried cameras, streaming every shadow of Ukraine's trenches back to Russian command. The rest carried explosives, deadly packages, programmed to erase anything that moved. The first detonations shook the horizon. A hospital roof collapsed in seconds. Barns and schools crumbled into flame. In Zaporizhzhia, a drone slammed into an evacuation bus, killing 23 civilians before they even left the city. The shock was instant, the fear indescribable. In Pokrovsk, a cluster of drones dove toward a residential block. Windows burst into shards. Within minutes, the entire district burned like a furnace. Families trapped inside basements suffocated under smoke. For the first time in the night, the world heard Ukraine scream. By the third wave, more than 200 casualties had already been recorded. Most of them, the very old and the very young. Analysts later calculated that in less than 40 minutes, Russia had thrown nearly $500 million worth of drones and munitions into the attack. For Moscow, it was the beginning of their decisive strike. For Ukraine, it was the opening of a nightmare. From the ground, soldiers watched in silence as the swarm filled the sky like locusts. "Hold your fire," commanders repeated. To fight too soon was suicide. To wait meant survival. Every second, Ukrainian reconnaissance drones fed back images of the chaos, pinpointing enemy launch points, tracking every Russian vehicle rolling in behind the storm. Amid the inferno, one truth became clear. Russia believed the skies alone could break Ukraine. But war is not decided in the air. The battlefield itself had yet to answer. And when it did, Moscow would learn that fire from above can never erase steel hidden below. By 6:15 a.m., the ground began to tremble. From the fog behind the drone strike, The second wave emerged, Russia's armored spearhead. 20 T-90 tanks rolled forward, each weighing 45 tons, their engines growling like beasts. Behind them, 30 military trucks carried nearly 500 recruits. Young men, barely trained, but ordered to march as the vanguard of Moscow's decisive push. The Iron Column moved without hesitation. Artillery shells rained indiscriminately, leveling bridges, shattering schools, ripping open crowded markets. In Pokrovsk, a barrage of explosions turned an entire neighborhood into rubble. Within 60 seconds, dozens of civilians vanished under concrete and flame. From their command posts, Russian officers barked orders through chaotic radio chatter. Advance! Fire at every building taller than 2 floors. Recon inside. They believed the drones had already cleared the path, that no resistance remained. Confidence hardened into arrogance. But every meter forward led them deeper into danger. The countryside had been prepared for weeks, reshaped into a labyrinth of traps. Hidden beneath farmland, anti-tank mines waited for their prey. Along dirt roads, trenches disguised as potholes stretched like invisible scars. Beneath railway tracks, explosives were wired with surgical precision. The recruits marched quickly, weapons raised, convinced their task was simple: occupy the ruins, push the defenders aside, and claim victory before the world awoke. Some even laughed, pointing at burning houses, as proof that Ukraine had collapsed. Yet above them, Ukrainian reconnaissance aircraft circled, transmitting their every step. Every truck, every tank, every careless movement was marked with red coordinates on the screens of hidden artillery crews. Russia believed brute force would carry them forward. But in reality, their advance was not a march toward triumph. It was a march into a graveyard, one carefully designed, patiently constructed, and waiting in silence beneath their very tracks. The Iron Storm pressed ahead, but the battlefield itself was ready to strike back. At 6:40 a.m., the first T-90 rumbled onto a low ridge west of Zaporizhzhia. Suddenly, the ground gave way. A 6-meter pit, wired with explosives, swallowed the tank whole. A flash, a roar, and the Iron Giant was torn apart. Its turret hurled 10 meters into the air before crashing back into the flames. It was not an accident. It was the first of dozens of traps that Ukraine had engineered with relentless precision. Entire fields had been converted into kill zones, hidden ditches packed with mines, trenches lined with detonators, roads wired to collapse beneath the weight of armor. Within minutes, chaos spread through the Russian formation. Radios filled with desperate voices, one unit pleading to retreat, another insisting to push forward. The commander's confidence fractured. What had begun as a march of steel now staggered into confusion. And then, Ukraine struck back. From concealed artillery sites, the Bordana cannon thundered. Shells landed within 2 meters of their targets. Explosions tore through trucks, scattering recruits into panic. Anti-tank mines shredded more vehicles before they could even fire a shot. In just 6 minutes, 5 Russian tanks were destroyed, without Ukraine firing a single rifle. As smoke blanketed the battlefield, the second phase began. From secret staging points, hundreds of combat motorcycles roared forward. These were no civilian bikes. Armored frames, thermal vision on handlebars, mounted machine guns, grenade launchers. Their advantage was speed, over 110 kilometers per hour across open terrain. They moved like a tornado, circling the broken Russian columns, chasing fleeing soldiers, striking with drive-by gunfire and grenades. Infantry who thought they had escaped suddenly found motorcycles bearing down from all directions, spitting fire and steel. In the chaos, Russia's infiltration teams, those who had crept in hours earlier, were exposed by Ukrainian drones. Their heat signatures glowed against the cold ground. One by one, artillery fire erased them, turning their sabotage mission into suicide. By 7:10 a.m., Russia's mighty advance had splintered into fragments. Tanks burned, trucks lay shattered, soldiers scattered across fields that had become death traps. What Moscow had believed to be an unstoppable storm was now reduced to smoke, wreckage, and fear. Backhand index pointing right question for the audience. If you were in the Russian commander's place at this moment, trapped between fire and retreat, would you press forward or order a desperate withdrawal? By 7:25 a.m., the battlefield was no longer a battlefield. It was a graveyard. Russian soldiers clustered around burning trucks, only to find themselves surrounded by Ukrainian Oplot tanks and artillery fire cutting off every road of escape. Some units tried to surrender, raising their hands in panic. Others fled blindly into open fields, where motorcycles and drones hunted them down without mercy. In less than 40 minutes of continuous fighting, Ukraine had destroyed or disabled nearly 20 armored vehicles and removed more than 100 Russian soldiers from the fight. By the end of the hour, over 450 troops were gone, killed, wounded, or captured. What Moscow had deployed as a regiment-sized force was being erased faster than the length of a football match. Satellite images later revealed the horror. A 5-kilometer stretch of farmland, littered with blackened tanks, smoking craters, and the twisted remains of trucks. Out of 30 vehicles, 20 were destroyed. Out of 20 tanks, 8 were burned beyond recognition, the rest abandoned. Russia's $500 million offensive had collapsed into rubble and ash. And yet, amid the carnage, one image broke through the fire. In Novopavlivka, a Ukrainian soldier was filmed kneeling beside a captured Russian teenager, no older than 19. His face was burned, his uniform torn. The Ukrainian offered him a bottle of water. That single act, mercy in the middle of hell, spread across the world, as a reminder that even in war, humanity still survives. By 8:10 a.m., the battle was over. Russia's largest strike of the summer had been annihilated in less than 90 minutes. Their dream of storming 3 cities before sunrise had turned into their most humiliating defeat since the war began. Military experts called it a legend, the perfect combination of modern reconnaissance, classic trench warfare, and precision artillery. Ukraine had spent less than $20 million on traps, drones, and shells. In return, they had destroyed more than $750 million of Russian firepower. The message was unmistakable. Brute force had failed. Numbers had failed. Blind violence had failed. What prevailed was patience, strategy, and the will to resist. The storm had passed, but the silence that followed carried a truth Moscow could not ignore. The morning of August 14, 2025, will not be remembered for its length. It will be remembered for its clarity. In less than 90 minutes, Russia launched one of its most ambitious offensives of the war: 180 drones, 20 T-90 tanks, 30 military trucks, and nearly 500 recruits. And in less than 90 minutes, Ukraine shattered it. A regiment meant to seize 3 cities was reduced to wreckage across 5 kilometers of scorched farmland. The numbers alone are staggering. 8 tanks burned to husks, 12 more abandoned, more than 20 trucks destroyed, with all troops inside, over 100 soldiers killed, 150 wounded, 200 captured. In all, nearly an entire regiment erased. The cost to Moscow, more than $750 million in men and machines. The cost to Ukraine, less than $20 million. But this battle was never about numbers. It was about what numbers cannot measure. It was about patience, weeks of preparation, trenches dug by hand, traps wired under farmland. It was about technology, drones scanning every shadow, artillery firing with meter-perfect precision. It was about resolve, the will of a nation that refused to be broken, no matter the scale of the storm. And most of all, it was about humanity. Amid the fire and destruction, the world saw a Ukrainian soldier kneel beside a 19-year-old Russian recruit, offering him a bottle of water. One act of mercy, in the middle of hell, reminded us that beyond the casualties, beyond the numbers, every figure represented a life. A son, a brother, a young man consumed by war. That moment, more than any statistic, defined the battle's legacy. For the Kremlin, this was not just a defeat. It was humiliation. A strike meant to showcase power, instead exposed weakness. A plan meant to terrify, instead inspired. Instead of breaking Ukraine, it strengthened it. Instead of silencing the world, it reminded everyone watching that even against overwhelming firepower, strategy, and will can prevail. And so the silence that followed carried a message, not only to Moscow, but to every nation watching. Strength is not found in the number of drones you launch, nor the weight of tanks you roll across a border. True strength lies in intelligence, in courage, and in the unshakable spirit of those who fight to defend their home. America knows this truth well. It is the lesson written in our own history, from the beaches of Normandy to the mountains of Afghanistan. And it is the same truth. Ukraine proved once again on that August morning. So now, I leave you with this question. Do you believe that in modern warfare, technology and strategy will always outweigh brute force? Or is sheer firepower still the ultimate decider on the battlefield? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you stand with freedom, if you believe in the courage of those who defend their homeland against impossible odds, then like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to our channel. Together, we will continue to bring you the frontline stories of courage, sacrifice, and the fight for liberty across the world. Because silence may follow the storm, but freedom will always speak louder.